bonds of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
And of course, you are with us in this beautiful morning.
And it's Wednesday morning.
And we are going to bring you more news from Southeast Asia.
Yep.
But to start off, just to give a bit of a shout out that Bloomberg TV is launching its Philippines channel.
And then Bloomberg TV is pretty much expanding their territory, I would say.
They already have it in
Southeast Asia.
Yeah, they already have it in Indonesia and then in Malaysia. For now, we have it in the Philippines. I think they will probably have every channel in every country.
Yes, and then they will confidently provide a lot of channels and programs and contents as well. And in fact, this Bloomberg now in the Philippines, it will be run in English since Filipinos they speak English, of course. And then this accurate and market moving news to one of the fastest growing. But why do they actually invest in the Philippines? Mainly because the Philippines is the fast becoming a premier broadcast destination because of the strong subscriber growth.
For me, my theory is because they have the money, they will open more channels anywhere else in the world.
That could be one of the theories.
That is my theory. But you know, but on a deeper level, especially what is happening in Malaysia and Singapore right now is pretty seditious. Actually, what I'm talking about is the sedition law charges. So just yesterday in Singapore, I mean, of course, in Malaysia, we talk a lot about Sedition Act, how much is against freedom of expression. But just yesterday that in Singapore, a couple was charged behind the Real Singapore. Is a website about anything to do with Singapore, especially Singapore's politics. They were charged under Sedition Act.
And then, in fact, these two people, they are the behind of this website that, like you mentioned, and then they uploaded all this news regarding the festival that was held, and then they were accusing Filipino family falsely, and also there was another cases that, like puppy murderer works in the healthcare industry, and all these seditious sort of articles were published. So they were charged under several acts. And in fact, a bail of 20,000 Singapore dollar each was offered. And under this Sedition Act, the maximum punishment is around a $5,000 fine and a 3 years jail on each charge.
Just to talk about who were the one being charged, one of the person is Takaki. I'm sorry, I'm so bad at
half Japanese, half Australian.
She's half Japanese and half Australian, and also Yang, probably a resident Singaporean, have been identified as being jointly responsible for the creation, development, and maintenance of the content in the Real Singapore. It's kind of scary because in the context of Singapore, because you can't really say anything, publish anything without being scrutinized by the government.
So does that mean that it's also quite strict in terms of giving the expression or ideas to the public?
And it's pretty hard because most of these charges, or if not all, are of course any expression that is related to Singapore's politics. Everything seems to need to be politically correct in Singapore. They can't even publish an article based on what they see is happening, culturally and socially in Singapore.
I can agree with you because do you remember the video that was virally going on YouTube after?
Who doesn't remember it? That 16-year-old kid,
exactly.
Amos Yee.
And apparently he was back for a while.
And apparently on his website he just published a donation run for his court his future court proceedings fee, and I think right after the case with Roy Ng, which also another guy that was being somehow sued by the Singaporean government. I think it's there are more and more people coming up, but it's just this one or two people. And it's not like the whole of Singaporean collectively demanding freedom of expression.
Yes. Well, we're moving on to the next case, which is about the Sabah, the Sedition Act, and what is the purpose of this Sedition Act there? And then the historically, it was supposedly from the British colonialism that they wanted to apply to Malaysians, but then it's been carried on, and apparently Sarawak and Sabah are also affected by this act.
Yes, they are affected, and because of that, because we might not really be that aware of what is happening in terms of their politics. They are a bit different. So there's these brothers. One brother is in Barisan Nasional, the one is in the opposition side. They call it the Kitingan brothers, and they are actually bickering over the Sedition Act, whether it should be implemented in this country or should it be abolished. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting how, even in Sabah and Sarawak, it affected them a lot in terms of how the Semenanjung or the Peninsula Malaysia's politics go about.
Yes, and the Sabah opposition leader, Dr. Jeffrey Kitingan, he said the outdated law also criminalizes the local activists who are trying to claim the Sabah's right. And at the same time, he added that the state leaders should reject the law in Sabah to get all together.
And the worst thing is, because of the amendment that had just happened recently, you can't even ask for a bail if you are being charged under Sedition Act, and that's a huge injustice towards those who probably being wrongly accused or needs to have their own personal right of justice.
And then no wonder that's why it looks like Malaysia is going back to Stone Age.
Well, that is according to the DAP member of parliament, of course. This is not just the Sedition Act, but including the Pota Act. What the hell is Pota again? It's actually a prevention Prevention of Terrorism Act. That's a huge theme to swallow.
So according to him, DAP MP Charles Santiago, he said the government has given itself and the police more powers, and it has made the role of judiciary almost redundant, and it has further strapped workers to the corner, spelling out that the opposition to the management can be deemed seditious as well.
So what we are seeing right now is the emergence of a new act. I have to be very frank with you. Maybe I'm a bit biased. I'm a bit for Pota. I think I've made clear even since a couple of weeks ago when it was first introduced to the parliament. I think what we are seeing with Pota right now is a defense mechanism by the Malaysian government against future terrorism act. In the past, we have ISA. Of course, ISA has been abused and misused by certain party, but with Pota, I think it's more targeted because it does have a clause where it doesn't cover political activity of individuals. It's more towards terrorist act, like real terrorist activity. So I guess I'm a bit biased for Pota, but at the same time, I do understand the concern being addressed by Member of Parliament from the opposition side, which it can definitely be misused and has been misused in the past. I mean, the best example is the Sedition Act.
And at the same time, do you think these two, of course, the amendment of the Sedition Act and as well as the Pota, will create more fear among the public, and that it will actually restrict the freedom of expression in this country, which is, where is the practice of democratic here?
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people might not know, but Anti-Terrorism Act is not a uniquely Malaysian thing. I think in Singapore, even in the United States, probably in South Korea as well, a lot of countries have similar acts. But the problem is the implementation part and how it's being interpreted. And I think that's the largest chunk of concern of the opposition, that I think governments need to reconsider how they implement Pota, how they the wordings in Pota should be amended according to what is to make it more specific, I guess.
And then personally, I feel really bad for Malaysia because with all these two acts and as well as the addition of the GST implementation to the country, the public is actually literally suffering at the moment, not to the extreme, but then there are changes that have been happening to the people.
So there are definitely a lot of changes right now. I mean, with the GST, even more changes. but at the same time, I have to highlight that the senators, which is from the Dewan Negara, they want to debate this Pota Act, and I think it's quite interesting that Pota has become such a huge concern that even from the Barisan Nasional camp, they want to really scrutinize it, and I think it's a great move. Yeah, this is according to the Senator's Council Chief. It says that the bill, like Pota and amendments to Sedition Act, had to be rushed due to the urgent situation the country was facing. And I totally understand, their point of view, but do they have to pass it at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Exactly. Do you think some of them are actually just following blindly to the government itself? Because
that's seditious.
Yeah, that is, it could be seditious, but at the same time, it looks like some of the factors were not considered. I mean, the fact that even the decisions was made at the 2 a.m. It's another thing that we have to consider. Why wouldn't make it a decision at 2 a.m.? Why wouldn't it be earlier and more professionally?
I mean, there were infamous photos of opposition leader just
getting tired
and fell asleep.
Yeah.
And then they of course, the project by Sina project where they highlighted opposition members that decided not to attend to even vote for it. But I mean, check and balances of member of parliament aside, at the same time, controversial bills should be given a longer time to be debated and tabled and discussed by all members of parliament, regardless of the camps. So I guess at the end of the day, I think what needs to be taken care of is the concerns of the people of Malaysia. And of course, in the larger scale of Singapore as well, I'm not sure whether they are going to debate about Sedition Act. There's a different ballgame altogether.
But the Singapore, when you talk about Singapore, it's very interesting. The country looks country is advanced in terms of most of the industry and the areas. But when it comes to freedom of expression, it's another area that it's pretty strict, and then somehow it's restricted.
Well, that's the pragmatic way that has been set by their former leaders, because they are just an island nation, and to them, being a bit more Confucius, as in like a bit focusing more on respecting leaders, controlling dissent. That has been the focus in the past. But in the future, will it work? There's a huge question mark that Singaporeans themselves need to answer. Anyway, we'll take one short break. When we return, we will discuss more news from Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Welcome back. This is Grace.
And of course, you are with us again for our ASEAN Daily. Just to give a bit of an update, a lot of people might not know, but the Human Resources Ministry is going to hold a manpower meeting during ASEAN Summit. Probably people don't care about it.
Yeah, but just to give a little bit of mention about this news, is the minister who is Datuk Seri Richard Rio James said the summit, scheduled to be held between August and October, was the best platform for them to improve the quality of the nation labor fundamentals. And also, in addition to that, he said several programs had been outlined for the summit, and including ASEAN seminar on balancing flexibility and security in labor market. So labor market is something that we have been discussing in Durian ASEAN.
We have been discussing again and again, but apparently in ASEAN there's two categories, skilled labor and unskilled labor.
Right.
And I think the biggest concern would be unskilled labor because education is still not education and also labor protection is still not on par yet to the standard of what we want to have in developed nations. So when you talk about skilled labor, it's still quite limited in terms of the resources in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, and in fact, for this coming up, the ASEAN events, most of our policies and regulations are for skilled laborers. How the qualifications, how they can actually have better free movement of skilled labor. And also the ASEAN Forum on Migrant Labor, like you mentioned, and ASEAN Declaration on Production and the Promotion of Right of Migrant Workers, and ASEAN Conferences on Productivity.
So there you go for those who are interested in migrant workers and labor, skilled or unskilled. You might want to know what they will be discussing during the ministerial meeting.
For sure, especially the big companies. Yeah.
And of course, on the other hand, I want to ask you one question.
Oh, all right. Ding, ding, ding.
So, what is your thought on our leading man, Indonesia?
Oh, Indonesia.
in ASEAN.
I thought you were going to Malaysia. Well, Indonesia, the current president, Joko Widodo, he actually did address this problem even before, that he will be focusing more of the nation internally rather than focusing the relationship between Indonesia and other countries.
But that has been Jokowi's campaign and also focus since beginning. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have been covering issues relating to foreign policy, and many times his administration has emphasized that they are going to be less focusing on other countries' interests but their own interests, and their own interests meaning that they might not want to be friends with everyone if it is not aligned with their goals.
Yeah, but in fact, Indonesia is such a powerful, and then the population is one of the largest in Asia, so they hold such a big power, and for the ASEAN as well. So to be able to move forward, don't you think Indonesia need to contribute at least a few percentage to the ASEAN? In fact, Indonesia, we do know that they have internal issues. I mean, every ASEAN country, we do have internal issues, but it looks like they really want to have a focus on their weaknesses, which is internal issues.
But that's the biggest problem, that they might not realize it. If they focus too much on their domestic politics rather than trying to be the big brother of Southeast Asia, I'm not sure whether they're even capable. I'm sorry, Indonesia. But that's the thing, right? When you talk about real security threats and also countries that are facing real conflict, Indonesia seems to be absent from the picture. I'm talking about the South China Sea dispute and the Cambodian conflict. Indonesia seems to not being taken like a strong position on this, and it can be the weakness or the Achilles heel for ASEAN.
Yes, and in fact, if we talk about the Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore, we would love to push the economic issues, and then also these countries played a pretty important role in moving on to this economic integration. But Philippines is also often more concerned about the social and cultural issues. It was all demonstrated by the initiation of ASEAN socio-cultural community. However, again, where is the Indonesian part in this ASEAN contribution?
They have always been saying that they are non-aligned to any other country or issues, or between China and the US, which is a great thing. But at the same time, I totally agree with you on the biggest question is, what is your role in ASEAN, Indonesia? Because
it is already part of ASEAN. But for sure, there's one thing that we can assure is ASEAN future, we cannot rely wholly on the Indonesia. And it has been invested with some sort of the power that could amplify the international image and also credibility if we have the sort of few percentage of participation from Indonesia.
And talking about Indonesia again, Grace, I just want to let you know.
Let me know. Okay, I will listen.
So apparently, Indonesian Islamic parties are seeking for a ban on alcohol consumption.
Jing, 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 jing. It's another one. Well, this is purely for the protection of the children of the nation, according to them. And but my question here is, how long will it last? And wouldn't it be leading more to have alcohol smuggling? If it was completely banned in the nation.
That's totally true. I think the biggest question is Indonesia, just like Malaysia, are facing even larger threats, and the threat is about religious interference in politics or political Islam, if you want to be specific on one religion. But if you look throughout Southeast Asia, you see it in Myanmar with Buddhism, and then of course Malaysia with Islam, together with Brunei and Indonesia. In fact, even Singapore, being a secular state, they have strong people who are Christians and Muslim that are pushing Singapore to be less secular than it is. So I guess in Southeast Asia alone, I think this is one of the largest concern of religious radicalism, and that's the reason why laws like Pota sometimes make sense, because on the other hand, you want freedom of expression,
right.
But on the other hand, freedom of expression can be abused by religious leaders or people with ill intention on religion to mix religion with politics, and I think that's the biggest problem that Southeast Asian are facing.
So when it comes to religion and politics, but here the Indonesia, the banning on alcohol, according to the Justice Party, they said this is not religious or ideological issue, and this is purely for protection. Or is it just to express themselves to the public? And ironically, they are banning this on alcoholism, so-called, to prevent of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan. So
why only fasting month? That's the biggest
exactly.
question.
So is it like previous moves to protect more consumption, or what is the agenda behind this move? It's a lot of questions.
Another question that I want to ask: if a similar law being held in Korea, I think people will cry because alcohol consumption is even greater there.
It's one of our culture, Arlene. So it will definitely sadden us, and it's also one of our economic growth that helps alcohol consumption there. Yeah.
So alcoholic companies, you might want to set up your company in Korea, not in Indonesia.
Well, they are welcome if they bring Indonesian beer.
Anyway, we'll take another short break. When we return, we'll talk more on the business side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Welcome back to Trian ASEAN. This is Grace.
And of course, you are with us again. So, Grace, are you scared of cyber espionage? Have you heard of it before?
Actually, yes, I am. I am scared of them because you never know when it will happen, and then they're very good at just attacking and discovering something very controversial and stuff, and then be able to steal the even personal information.
So I'm linking this threats of cyber espionage with the upcoming ASEAN summit. So apparently there's this concern about regional government and military officers, businessmen, journalists involved in the upcoming 26th ASEAN summit in KL. They could be targets of the recently discovered cyber espionage group claiming as an internet. This is a claim by an internet security firm. This is scary, right?
And then one of them, FireEye, which exposed the presence of an APT-30 group of hackers on the government and the business, including those in Southeast Asia. So Southeast Asia, especially when it comes to ASEAN, they have a lot of documentations and online information. They are not available yet, but then the information could be leaked out because of them also. So this is again comes with the security and then how it is protected by the government. But with this all this I will call hackers how are you gonna, prevent from, not getting leaked all this information?
Well, according to FireEye, like you mentioned just now, it is based in the United States. It says that the APT30 had a distinct interest in organizations and governments associated with Southeast Asia or ASEAN. The group have released a malware in the run-up to the 18th ASEAN Summit previously in Jakarta in 2011 and the ASEAN-India Commemorative Summit in 2012. One of the domain names it uses to command its malware is ASEANM.com, so beware of that particular domain name.
Yeah, and then these hackers, they're after intelligence and information, primarily about the political changes, political positions, especially over disputed territories, border disputes and trade negotiations. And also at the same time, they're most likely sponsored by China.
That's the scary part, right?
Yes.
It's most likely sponsored by China. This is according to FireEye again. What we are seeing right now is most probably Chinese-trained hackers from China trying to infiltrate into what the happenings of Southeast Asian and ASEAN. And this is scary because we do have a huge dispute against China, and I'm mentioning about the South China Sea and how it if ASEAN will be a single market and have a single voice, then countries like China would be fearing about this because they cannot take a stronger position on this, for example, the South China Sea, because they have to deal with all 10 countries instead of just the Philippines or Vietnam.
Yes, and according to the FireEye report, Malaysia is one of the 7 countries with targets hit by the group, and which has operated largely undetected for the past 10 years. And then with that, others are Thailand, Vietnam, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, India, and United States as well.
In fact, there's an analysis doing a research on this, and they are confirming that China is definitely spying on India and ASEAN member states. A new report details cyber attacks of a sophisticated group of hackers, which of course have ties to the Chinese government. And what we are seeing right now is the slowly emerging modus operandi with cybersecurity firms that are time and again trying to highlight alleged government-sponsored cyber attacks in order to deter future hacks, but also to gain publicity and promote their own business interests. So what we are seeing right now is it's not just about security threats. I think it's all boils down to economy. Yeah, so security and economy. And ASEAN, we are in between.
It looks like ASEAN just added another issue.
Definitely, ASEAN have added more issues to this particular area of cybersecurity threats. On another news, also about money, I just want to highlight here that there's a $70 billion opportunity in ASEAN awaiting all of us. This is according to the CPG fims. According to that particular report, that robust consumption fueled by a rapidly growing consumer class and rising incomes and urbanization definitely will generate that $770 billion.
That's a lot of money, Arlene, there. And then definitely ASEAN will propel an additional 40 million people into higher income tiers by 2017. And that we are talking about the ASEAN economy here, and it's one of the fastest growing in the world, and expected to reach around $3 trillion by 2020. And with the 60 million people becoming part of the regions and consuming class over the next 5 years. So it looks very ambitious, and it looks we're really progressing. But then with the ASEAN events that are coming up in April as well as October and November, we really need to be able to execute all those plans that we have.
So I would say that in terms of market, it's definitely growing.
Yes.
And there's just another research that's saying that by 2013 there will be more middle class in Southeast Asia, and of course more middle class meaning more purchasing power, and the most of the middle class will be coming to sprouting out from countries, unlikely countries, especially countries on the Indo-China area, and of course the original five, which is Malaysia, Brunei, Singapore, Thailand, and the Philippines.
Right.
On another news that we would like to highlight, which is equally interesting, is about Vietnam. So Vietnam is definitely right for green investment. This is according to the establishment post. What is being reported is from 2012, the green growth strategy has aimed to develop Vietnam into a low carbon economy and enrich natural capital. I am quite curious for this. I'm not sure whether they can do it or not, because Vietnam is still a long way when it comes to economic development, but for them to focusing on green investment is actually a great thing, because it's very rare for them to do that.
Yes, at the same time, they're focusing on the Ho Chi Minh City, and this is pretty much, I will say, it's promising because they are collaborating with the Japan and the South Korea, and then especially South Korea. One of the biggest company is called Koika. Koika is investing quite a lot of money. It's called the Korean International Corporation and Agency. They have been actively supporting the Vietnam Ministry of Planning and Investment. And then, in fact, they are focusing more on the green growth strategy. So it comes with the architecture and then the regulations and the big companies. So they will be built and improve and develop more in the Ho Chi Minh City.
It's quite interesting that whenever we talk about green investment or green growth or anything has the word green, there's always a Korean company in it.
Are you stereotyping, Arlene?
Even in Malaysia, I still remember, meeting some of the Korean officials in the Korean embassy. Green technology is definitely one of the focus. I think to look at Korea foreign policy and Korea business policy, definitely Korea has a more edge towards anything green.
And also environment friendly stuff. Yeah.
So go Korea.
Yes. But for this, go Vietnam. Because not to forget the Japanese company, the famous one, Toshiba and the Mitsubishi, is also on the par to support this green environmental project. And then it will be called the Eco Smart City in Vietnam.
Yes, all the best, Vietnam. And that's all for our news today. So Grace, they can always listen to us at drenasen.com and of course via their mobile by downloading the TuneIn app and search for Durian ASEAN.
And other than that, we also have social media channels such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And your feedbacks are always welcome.
Thank you.